Y'all, welcome back to this week's Bourbon of the Week. This week we got no fancy green screens, we got no crazy introduction. If you don't know what we do on this channel by now, we take the bourbons in my collection behind me, we rank them on price, taste, drinkability, and we see where they fall. But this week we got something special for you. I have a friend of mine, Chef Ant, joining us from BlackYardBBQ. If you don't already, check this man out on YouTube, check him out on Instagram. Great chef, putting together some amazing recipes, and this week he has a recipe for us that includes Evan Williams 100 proof Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey. Some people call it white label. So we're gonna get his recipe, we're gonna try and replicate it here so I can try it. Then we're gonna get to the review on the Evan Williams. So let's get to it.
Hey, what's going on YouTube? Chef Ant from BlackYardBBQ. I'm here with Chris today, and I know you're wondering, what's the barbecue guy doing on the bourbon channel? Well, I'll tell you why. Today we're cooking with bourbon. You heard it here. We are cooking with bourbon. I'm going to show you guys how to get your own bourbon marinade. Use bourbon, lemon juice, soy sauce, brown sugar, and hey, I just let it sit for about 6-7 hours. You kind of want to let it marinate for a while. We're cooking 2 New York strip steaks. That's one of Chris's favorite cuts. So we're going to do some New York strip steaks today, and we're going to show you guys how to get those marinated well in a nice bourbon marinade. So I figured we'd take this time to just talk and walk through what we did. So again, we took a bourbon and we made a marinade. And that bourbon is going to basically act as a meat tenderizer. So it's going to tenderize your meat. It's going to break down those proteins in the meat to make it nice and tender for you. Don't get me wrong, it'll add a little bit of flavor, but mostly in the marinade that I created, that bourbon is going to act as the tenderizer, and that soy sauce is going to add that flavor. When doing this, if you have more steaks, of course, you're going to want to use more bourbon, more soy sauce, more lemon juice and things like that. And then you can play around with it, have your fun. You know what you like. The main key thing you want to remember is use bourbon. Next time you cook a steak, use some bourbon and tell me what you think. Okay, so I'm going to get these steaks marinated in this Evan Williams white label. I'm going to get them on the grill. We're going to do a taste test on this bourbon, and then we're going to do a taste test on the steaks. But the next thing that I know you guys are looking forward to is tasting these steaks. We're going to get them off, cut them up, and give them a taste. I'm back. The smell is phenomenal. Got my piece right here, ready to go. So take a bite, see what we got. Oh my gosh. So tender and juicy. My mind had to process everything that just exploded. Man, this is a pretty good piece of steak. That is delicious. I'm gonna have me another drink, and then I'm gonna sit back and hear what you have to say. So, to you, Chris.
Here we go. The ultimate test. Everybody knows. Time for the first bite. A little pink still. The marinade probably soaked right into there. Let's see what we got. Cheers. That is delicious. Chef Ant was right. Very tender, very juicy. Great steak. Cooking with bourbon's the way to go. Let's get this review going though. So there you have it, cooking with bourbon, 100 proof, white label, Evan Williams. If you haven't already, make sure you check out Chef Ant at BlackYardBBQ on Instagram and on YouTube. He's got a bunch of amazing recipes, bunch of amazing meats that he cooks. So check him out. And in the meantime, everybody knows before we get started, time for the traditional sip. That's pretty good. So I mentioned in the intro, this is Evan Williams Bottled and Bond 100 proof. And what does it mean to be bottled and bond? Well, there's 5 criteria you have to meet. Number 1, it has to be bottled at 100 proof. Number 2, it has to be aged for at least 4 years. Number 3, it has to have U.S. government oversight. So basically the government has to watch you make this. Number 4, it has to be bottled in the same season that it's distilled in. And number 5, it must be labeled on the label where it was bottled in that year and where it was distilled if they are separate locations. Obviously it has to be done in the U.S. if it's going to be U.S. federally regulated, but those are the 5 things that make it bottled and bond. Now what does that mean for us? Not too much. It doesn't make it any different or any better or worse than other bourbons. Basically it just means that it meets those 5 criteria and they can put bottled and bond on the label. Now I know what you're thinking, Chris, was that the bourbon bomb of the week? And it was not. Before we get to that, let's check in with Chef Ant, see what he thinks of the white label.
Let's go and get this traditional first sip. So I'm gonna pour my first sip right here. Here we go. Oh yeah. It's definitely 100 proof. It's definitely 100 proof. Believe it or not, I like it. I like it. It actually has a nice taste. It also has a little bite. Of course it has a bite. It's 100 proof. But it definitely lets you know that it's 100 proof, if you know what I mean. But I would drink this. But that's a nice taste. Drinkability, nice. Where I am, Bentonville, Arkansas, Northwest Arkansas, what have you, whichever you want to call it. This bad boy was 17 bucks. So to me, that gives me a 9.7 on the price scale. To me. Let's move on to drinkability. At first, I didn't know if I would be able to continue to drink it because, like I said, it did let me know that it was 100 proof. So for drinkability, I'd give it a, let's go 7.6. I give it a 7.6 on drinkability. I'd give it a 7 on taste as well. Those are my rankings for this Evan Williams white label.
Thank you, Chef Ant. Great review. And before we get to our numbers, you know what time it is. Bourbon Bomb of the Week. This week's Bourbon Bomb coming straight from Evan Williams himself. If you don't know Evan Williams, I'm sure you've heard of some of the products. Evan Williams is a big name in the bourbon world, and there's a reason for that. He's actually considered one of the founding fathers of bourbon. He was actually born in Wales in 1755 and moved to the U.S. in 1780 after what seemed to be a failed whiskey venture in Wales. 1783 opened what was considered one of the first U.S. distilleries, started distilling bourbon, put out a product, and became one of the founding fathers of bourbon there. So without Evan Williams, who knows where we would be. He's from Louisville when he moved here in 1780. 3 years later, he's making bourbon. He basically built Louisville from what I can tell on the online stories. So shout out to you, Evan Williams, and thanks for bringing us such a great product. Cheers. Getting into this, the first thing that we always talk about is drinkability, and I'm going to mention the mash bill before we get into drinkability on that for this simple reason. This is a low rye mash bill. It's 78% corn, 12% malted barley, and only 10% rye, which is some of the lower rye that we've ever done on this channel, which is actually very interesting because when you taste this first sip, it's not very harsh at all. It's actually really smooth for 100 proof, and I think the reason for that is you're not getting any of that rye kick. You're not getting any of that real rye bite when it comes to this. So this is going to get a great score on drinkability. I honestly think for 100 proof, this drink's almost like a mid-80s, even low 90s. So let's give this a pretty good score on drinkability. Let's drop it in at like an 8.9 on the drinkability scale. And like I said, we only have Widow Jane, I think, higher on the drinkability scale than this, which is a 94 proof if I remember correctly. So as for the taste on this actually has a pretty subtle taste profile. It's nothing bad by any means, but it's nothing extraordinary. Very sweet. There's no real high rye, it's high corn. So it is very sweet. You get a lot of vanillas, a lot of caramels, no real oak, no real smoke or anything like that, which I actually don't hate, especially being 100 proof and how smooth it is. I used to like the lower proof ryes, but maybe I like a high proof no rye bourbon as well. Kind of both balances each other out there. So this also doesn't last very long in the mouth. I would say it's a quote unquote medium finish, meaning it's not gone right away, but it's also not there forever. And on the finish, you actually do get like this slight hit of oak, and it's almost dry. It almost like dries your mouth out, which I guess is good because then you want to take another sip. But the flavor isn't bad. It's got great flavors. It's very well balanced. Nothing overwhelms the other. But again, it's nothing extraordinary. I don't think that it's, the best tasting bourbon that I had, but I also don't think it's the worst tasting bourbon that I've had. And again, we're going to get in price in a minute, but it's $17 bottle, so you're not going to expect too much of a flavor kick with it. So let's give this like a 6.8 on the taste scale. So that's going to bring us right over into price. $17.99. This is an $18 bottle. We've been doing a lot of budget bourbons lately. Last week, I'll link it above, we just did 3 other bourbons under $20. And I'm kind of upset I didn't put this one in, but I knew I was going to be doing this one this week with BlackYardBBQ, Chef Ant. So I wanted to make sure I saved it for a special occasion. But this is actually a really good value for what you're going to get. If I were to blind taste test this, I would have put this up in the 25 plus range, maybe even pushing $30 for this bottle. And it's only a $17.99 bottle. So pushing 30, only less than 20. This is lucky it wasn't up against the contenders last week, because this would have blown all three of those out of the water, if you ask me. 100 proof, so you're getting your bang for your buck. Not a bad taste profile by any means, and it's only $17.99. I'm going to give this a pretty good score on price. I'm going to give this like an 8.5 if I had to say. So that's going to give us an average of 8.06 repeating. We'll call it 8.07 and drop it in like 12th or 13th, right behind our Knob Creek 9-year. Actually tied with the Knob Creek 9-year. I think it's a great spot for it. They got a great product here. 100 proof, bang for your buck, $17.99. Kind of always going to find it. I've never not seen it on the shelves. Evan Williams knows what they're doing, and they've been doing it for a long time. Go out, grab yourself a bottle, try it out, and let me know what you think. But in the meantime, make sure you hit that like and make sure you hit that subscribe. We're also doing a new competition where if you put a comment in the comment section below with a bourbon that you think I should be trying, I'll go out, I'll grab the bottle, I'll rank it on the ranking sheet, and if it ranks number 1, I'll send you a cash prize in your Venmo. But in the meantime, make sure you follow BlackYardBBQ, both on YouTube and on Instagram. I appreciate him being with me again this week, and if I'm ever in Arkansas, I'll bring the bourbon, you bring the meats, and we'll get something cooking. But in the meantime, though, thanks for everybody stopping by again this week. Please don't drink and drive. Drink responsibly, and as always, wash your hands. Pandemic ain't over, y'all. Cheers.